Good morning, students. This is Harcharan Singh, and you all are welcome to the e-learning portal of Cambridge International School, Dasua. As you know, we are reading the first textbook, that is Hornbill. Dear students, yesterday we read the first poem, that is a photograph written by Shirley Tolson. This is only to recap. I just want to tell you the poem, a photograph written by Shirley Tolson, that has been written in three phases. This has been written in the memory of the poet's beloved mother. She tells the first phase of the poem is when the poet's mother was a 12-year-old girl. She was on the beach with her two cousins, Betty and Dolly, and they were paddling. Paddling means moving on the beach, and one of their uncle who had the camera, he captured their photograph. This is the first phase of the poem. The second phase of the poem is that is after 20 or 30 years later. The mother is looking at her photograph and she is telling the poet about their sea vacation. She is telling how they were dressed, and the two girl cousins, one is Betty, one is Dolly, and their uncle clicked their photo, and the mother is very happy to see that memory. Later on, after 12 years, when the poet's mother is no more, the poet is thinking about her mother and is missing her. Students, these are the three phases and three stanzas of the poem of photograph. Students, today we are going to start the next chapter, that is, we are not afraid to die if we can all be together. It's written by Gordon Cook and Ellen East. Students, this is this chapter that is about one adventurous journey. This journey that we call voyage. Voyage means journey through ocean. This is the story of a 37-year-old businessman. Actually, he is the narrator of this story. He and his wife and their two children, they all want to make a voyage. They want to go on the voyage around the whole world. Actually, 200 years ago, one famous person, Captain James Cook, he had made the journey of the entire world through ocean. So this couple wants to copy Captain James Cook. So for this purpose, they have been doing practice for the last 16 years, and they have made a wooden boat. It's a wood. They have named it Waywalker. That is 23-meter long, 30-ton, wooden hulled. And now the family is taking help of two crewmen, and they start their journey from Plymouth, England, in July 1976. The first phase of the journey was very good. It was very pleasant, but gradually, when they started facing big waves in the ocean, the journey became very difficult. The big waves hit their ship Waywalker very badly, and they got stuck into the ocean, in the middle of the ocean, where they had no hope. All their things, including their ship, everything was damaged. So this is the story during the journey, how they survived. So let us begin. We are not afraid to die if we can all be together. So, students, the chapter begins. I will explain it to you pairwise. The narrator, he is a 37-year-old businessman, and he, along with his wife Mary and two children, Jonathan, 6 years old, and Suzanne, daughter, that is 7 years. They want to go on a voyage on their ship in July 1976. They started from Plymouth, England, and they wanted to complete the sea trip around the world, just like the one that had been completed 200 years ago by the famous Captain James Cook. The narrator and his wife spent 16 years improving their seafaring skills. That means they have done a practice of 16 years. Good morning, students. This is Harcharan Singh, and you all are welcome to the e-learning portal of Cambridge International School, Dasua. So, students, when they started their journey, they have planned a 3 year journey, and that is 1,05,000 kilometers. And the first phase of the journey that was very pleasant, there was no problem. They sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. The narrator hired two crewmen. Crewmen means two persons to help them during the journey. They were named, one is Larry Vigil, that is an American, and the other one is Herb Siegler, he is a Swiss. Now, this is the first part of their journey that is going on well, and they did not face any kind of problem in the first part. So students, in the first part they did not find any problem, but when it was their second day in Cape Town, they started facing very big waves. There was very strong wind blowing, and that continued for several weeks. There were a strong wind was not a problem, but the 15 meters high waves, which were the height of the mast, worried the narrator. So students, when it was the second day, for many weeks the strong wind was blowing, and after that they started facing very big waves. The waves were not the problem. The problem was the big size of the waves. They were 15-meter in height up to the main mast. So, students, the narrator and his family, along with two crewmen, they all have been traveling for the last many months. And this is the month of December, and it's December 25. They had traveled 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. The weather was not good, but in spite of the weather was bad, but still they celebrated Christmas. And what they are expecting in the same manner, if the weather improves, they can celebrate New Year also. The weather remained the same till New Year's Day, but they hoped for it to change soon. They are expecting that the weather will change. Yes, the weather changed, but it did not improve. It got worse. So, students, the family wished the weather should change. Yes, the weather changed, but it did not improve. Rather, it got worse. So, it's January 2, and the weather is getting worse, and the waves were very big. when they saw on the early morning of January 2, the waves were very big. They were sailing with only a small storm jib, and the speed was 8 knots. Students, I just want to tell, knot is the unit of speed that is measured when you travel in the ocean. So, as I told, they were sailing with a small storm jib, and the speed was 8 knots when the ship was sailing with the huge waves. They could see the huge sea in front of them. The noise of the waves and strong winds was very painful for the ears. They dropped the storm jib to slow down the ship and hit a heavy mooring rope across the back part of the ship in a loop. These were all the necessary arrangements because the family is thinking, the crew is thinking that they are going to face a very big storm. So they made all necessary arrangements. The arrangements were they dropped the storm jib to slow down the ship and hit a heavy mooring rope across the back part of the ship, and they lashed everything with double force. They put on their oilskins and life jackets. That means they had made all arrangements in case the ship is drowned. So they kept ready their their lifeguards, and they wore their oilskins and everything and life jackets. They attached lifelines and went through the life raft drills and waited. They were just waiting when the storm gets worse they can protect themselves. Okay, what happened next? The same day, it was around 6 p.m., and one thing very strange happened with the team. What was that? There was an unpleasant silence, and the silence was everywhere. It was an indication of a disaster which was about to happen. I mean, they are expecting because everything was so silent, and they are expecting that some big storm or big disaster is going to happen. The wind suddenly dropped and the sky was darker with very heavy clouds. A huge cloud that was coming towards the stern of the ship. Stern means the backside of the ship, but later the narrator realized it was not a cloud, but it was a very big wave that was standing above the ship. The wave was perfectly vertical. It was vertical, and it was twice the height of the previous waves. It was double in size. The waves that they encountered before that was very big wave, and they saw with the top of the wave looking unpleasant due to its height. It was so big wave that the whole team was afraid. When the wave stood just above the ship, the team is thinking it would not do any harm and they could ride over the wave. What happened after that? The thunder increased, and the wave moved the stern up. They thought that it would not do any damage, but a huge explosion vibrated the deck. The big wave that was broken on the deck of the ship, and after that there a very strong moving stream of green and white water broke over the ship. There was water everywhere on the ship, and they all were in big trouble, and the narrator's head that smashed in the wheel of the ship. He got very big injury on his head, and he was tossed just like a doll because the water's force was very great. The narrator's head smashed in the wheel of the ship, and he flew overboard and sank below the waves. He was drowning, he was sinking. The narrator here, he thought that he cannot do anything and his death was sure. He accepted that his death was approaching and he started losing consciousness and he was feeling very peaceful. Okay, as students, what we read today, I'm just going to revise that. We are reading We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together, written by Gordon Cook and Ellen East. In this chapter, the narrator is a 37-year-old businessman. He and his wife Mary, son Jonathan, and daughter Suzanne, they all want to go on a voyage. Voyage means a journey in the ocean. Actually, 200 years ago, one famous person, Captain James Cook, he had made a journey of the whole world. Now this family, they also want to make the journey of the entire world just to copy Captain James Cook. So for this purpose, the husband and wife, the narrator and his wife Mary, they both have been doing practice for the last 16 years. They have undergone every type of difficult situation in the roughest waters, in the roughest weathers, wherever they could find. They have got every skill of the water and they have got a lot of training for that, and for this purpose they have made one boat that is a 23-meter long and 30-ton wooden boat, and they have named their boat Wave Walker. So, for this purpose, the boat that was made professionally, they have tried the boat in every difficult situation and difficult weather they could. Before starting the journey, they hired two crewmen, that is Larry and Herb. They are their helpers, they would help them into the ocean. Now, when the journey started, the initial phase of the 3 year long journey of 1,05,000 kilometers passed pleasantly. The first part of the journey that was very good, there was no problem. They sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. The narrator, as we know, they had hired two helpers, Larry and Herb. So the journey was good, there was no problem. But on the second day in Cape Town, they encountered a strong wind which continued for several weeks. A strong wind was not a problem, but 15 meters high waves, which were the height of the mast. That was a very big worry for the team. After that, what happened? On December 25, they had traveled 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. They had celebrated Christmas. Even the weather was not good. It was very bad weather, but in spite of that, they were able to celebrate Christmas. And they are expecting that they would celebrate the New Year also. The weather remained the same till New Year's Day, but they hoped for it to change soon. They just want the weather should change. Yes, the weather changed, but it did not improve. Rather, it became worse. The weather was still getting worse day by day. On the early morning of January 2, the waves were very big. They were sailing with a small storm ship at a speed of 8 knots. When the ship was sailing with the huge waves, they could see the huge sea in front of them. The noise of the waves and strong winds was painful for the ears. They dropped the storm ship to slow down the ship and hit a heavy mooring rope across the black back part of the ship in a loop. They lashed everything with double force. They put on their life skins and life jackets and attached lifelines and went through the life raft drills and waited. I mean, they had made all necessary arrangements. I mean, in case of they get stuck into the storm, they had made every arrangement. Around 6 p.m., an unpleasant silence rolled over the ship. It was an indication of a disaster which was about to happen. The wind suddenly dropped and the sky was darker with heavy clouds. A huge cloud was coming towards the stern of the ship, but later the narrator realized it was not a cloud, but it was a big wave. The wave was perfectly vertical and it was twice in the size of the previous waves. They saw with the top of the wave looking unpleasant due to its height. The team was afraid because the wave was very big. After that, the wave broke onto the deck of the ship and there was a thunder. The thunder increased and the wave moved the stern up. They thought that it would not do any damage, but there was a big explosion that vibrated the deck. A strong moving stream of green and white water broke over the ship. The narrator's had smashed in the wheel of the ship and he was flying overboard and sank below the waves. And the narrator thought he is going to die and he was losing consciousness. Thank you, students.